coming off of a very exciting weekend of activity in Plymouth, where our concept for this event has been validated through some spectacular racing in front of huge, huge audiences. And to give you a taste of that, we'd like to start with just a little highlight clip from what just happened in Plymouth this past weekend.
Saved it, and you know the guys are going, we're gone. No, we're okay, no, we're fine. So went nose diving and tipped over, and yeah, it's all good. And I was on the top and had a little fall from the top and hit the wing, and then no damage to me. I was more worried about the wing getting damaged, to be honest, than what hurt the boat.
It was very exciting in Plymouth. We had over 100,000 live spectators on shore standing close watching the action, which really validated the concept of making this event accessible and bringing it to the public and for the masses, and it was quite exciting. Highly encourage all of you to have a look at the highlights that are online from the weekend's activities, in particular from yesterday's final day of racing. It was also quite spectacular. We had another capsize, which was not shown in this video. There was also a crash pre-race before the start, and then once the racing got going, we also had some pretty spectacular performance on the water by the guys. So lots of positive comments and lots of great feedback coming out of Plymouth for the event. So to give you some background about the concept and a little more depth on where we're going with this and how this has all come about being, as we all know, the Cup is now in San Francisco for the first time. Everybody's very excited about it. This is the new home of the America's Cup. And I can tell you from personal recent experience being in Plymouth this past weekend, being in Newport, Rhode Island this past weekend, there's a whole community of very jealous people back there that wish that they were in your shoes. If we talk about the concept, the America's Cup has always been about technology. It's always been about innovation. It's got this wonderful 160-year tradition in history, and now we are combining that tradition in history with a new approach, still paying honor and tribute to the technology and the innovation of the concept, with these dramatic new wing-sailed catamarans that are performing beautifully. They are unbelievably fast, and they are the star of the show. And this is very much like Formula One racing, if you will, where the car and the sounds of the car, and in this case the boat, is equally as impressive as the crowd and the event and what's happening, off of the race course. So it's really brilliant.
Tom, sir, do you mind if you sit down while you do this? We can just close to the microphone.
Sorry, sure. Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. So to touch further on that point and to help explain what's going on, the AC-45 is the boat that's being raced right now. It's the 45-foot catamaran that you see being featured in the America's Cup World Series. That boat will continue to be used through the end of the World Series, which finishes in May of 2013, and I'll come back onto the schedule in a minute. For the Louis Vuitton Cup and for the final, which means the mass majority, the bulk of what you're going to see here in San Francisco in 2013 will be sailed in the AC-72, which is the much larger, much faster version of this design, of this class. The AC-45 is crewed by 5 people, whereas the AC-72 will be crewed by 11 people. And that will be debuted in training and practices that are happening in advance of the Louis Vuitton Cup, but then obviously the competition kicks off in early July 2013 in the 72s for the Louis Vuitton Cup. Our theme and our motto of all of this is it's the best sailors and the fastest boats. And as we build the product and as we redefine the future of America's Cup sailing, it is absolutely our intention and our motivation to take this message around the world so that every youth sailor, every non-sailor, every professional sailor is reminded and is aware of the fact that this really is the pinnacle of the sport. This is the highest level of competition, and this is the aspirational target for any young athlete that would ever want to reach the pinnacle of their sport, to dream one day of sailing in the America's Cup and be a part of this exciting, extreme, fast, athletic competition. For the first time ever for the America's Cup, we've also introduced this concept of leveling the playing field. So at the moment in the World Series, and this has never been done before, all of the teams are racing on identical boats. They were all manufactured in the same facility, and who wins and who loses is really based on the performance of the team. At the moment, there is no technological advantage from one team to the next. They're all racing in the exact same equipment, which is, as I said, it's never been done before. It's one of the innovations that is really spectacular for the sport.
That's not going to be the case in the 72.
That will not be the case in the 72s. However, compared to the past, the scope and the range with which they're able to design their boats has been narrowed significantly. So these boats will be as close to each other as possible within the history and the tradition of the protocol and the deed of gift for the competition.
Any idea how much it costs to build one of those 72-foot?
I do not. I can't comment on that. Okay. As I mentioned, athletic and extreme. These races are all at the moment being boxed into sort of 20-minute time frames. So the match racing takes about 20 minutes to complete a single match race, which is head-to-head, and a fleet race, which is where we have all the boats on the water at the same time, takes about 40 minutes to complete. We have a 10 to 15-minute break in between races, and we usually race approximately 3 of these competitions per day. And I can tell you that in between the races and at the end of the competition on each individual day, these athletes, these sailors are absolutely shattered. They are exhausted. These are physical, they're demanding, and these guys are operating in excess of 80% of their maximum heart rate when they're actually sailing these boats. So this is athleticism at its finest.
Of the teams that are in now, how many do you anticipate will be in when they go to the 72s?
We anticipate all of the teams to be in.
They've all got the coin to make it happen.
I didn't say that. I said what we anticipate to happen, which is that all of the teams that are currently in will be successful in their fundraising to the conclusion of the program and will be with us here in 2013.
The World Cup that's going on now, it doesn't actually have anything to do with the America's Cup. They're totally separate athletic events. They don't lead, one doesn't lead into the other, correct?
That's right. The America's Cup World Series is like Formula One racing. It's an individual season that has a final and a champion, and when that season is finished, then it begins with the next season, which then all the points go to 0 and they start over again and they race and compete. And then the end of the second season will have its champion, and then we'll pick up with Louis Vuitton in the America's Cup. So the best way to explain it to an American audience is to say that, if you will, the World Series is kind of like the regular season. The Louis Vuitton Cup is sort of like the playoffs, and very much like in the NHL, sort of everybody is qualified for the playoffs, and then the final. But there is no direct link in terms of competition points between the World Series and the Louis Vuitton Cup because they're stepping up in a class of boat.
And how many of these World Series Cups are going to be sailed here?
We have the first 2. I'll come to the schedule in a second, actually. Okay, the close-to-shore racing concept also is something that's new, that's never been done, and this is the way that we're able to bring the sport to the people and to allow the mass audience and allow the introduction of the sport to a new era and a new generation of folks who are not necessarily hardcore sailors, but at the same time, obviously, still respects the traditions of the sailing competition for those that are experts. It was really fantastic to see so many people. As I said, we had over about 115,000 people that came out to Plymouth, including about 22,000 that were out on Sunday. And this is just now, it's a spectator event for the entire family, whether you like sailing or don't like sailing. If you enjoy speed and athleticism and a really cool spectacle, this is exactly what this is now. And it's thanks to the technology of these boats that we're able to sail so close to shore and to bring this show to the people, if you will. It's also another one of the main points as to why San Francisco was chosen for the event, because the amphitheater that we have and the ability to have tens of thousands of live spectators is really unsurpassed right here. It's really a phenomenal venue for this concept. Continuing on the technology theme, as many of you already know, we have invested a tremendous amount of time and energy into the research and the ability to be able to broadcast this in a way that's never been done before. We now have the ability to do the live on-screen graphics that help us to define the playing field. So to take traditional sports marketing tools, like having an actual playing field that you can see, is really key to the ability to educate new fans and to bring new people to the sport like never before. And this is really a remarkable advance by our team and by the people that have been working on this to make this possible. In the past, this technology has only been possible through fixed camera positions. So that little yellow line you see in the NFL that identifies the first down mark is only possible from a fixed camera position. We've now been able to make it a dynamic process where everything that is used to drive the system is done on the boats themselves, as well as with the 3 helicopters that are circling above. So this is really a groundbreaking advance in broadcast technology to take this sport to a whole new level of understanding and popularity. Likewise, we've made a huge commitment to our online platform and to social media and to the networking capability of the Cup to help spread our messages and to bring our environment together, for a variety of different issues, not only around the sailing, but also on some of the things I'll talk about in a minute. For example, our commitment to sustainability and of course, our World Series, to promote our host cities around the world as we travel with us. I mean, this is a great way for us to gather our audience as we go and really communicate what we're doing. I'll also mention, of course, quickly that we have this partnership with YouTube, which is also a groundbreaking partnership, and that they've now allowed us to, to have their hosting on our website, which is the first for them. We've got this new quad player that allows people to be able to choose the way that they want to consume the event, whether it's with different audio channels or by following a particular boat or by paying attention to the graphics more than the live racing. You really have a customizable experience on americascup.com, which you haven't had before. Thanks to, in large part, to the YouTube partnership. I mentioned briefly our commitment to sustainability. As you know, we are committed to helping save the world's oceans. It's a logical fit. Sailors love the sea. It allows us to create a program where we have a global initiative that we can enact locally with local constituents. So it's a very inclusive concept. This is not designed to, to favor only 1 or 2 organizations. It's really intended that we unite the community of organizations around the world that are active in helping us protect and save the world's oceans. And then together with that, as you know, we're also very committed to delivering a green, carbon-neutral event with no waste here in San Francisco. And we're also working to enact many of the principles that we're developing for San Francisco. We're actively delivering those principles in our World Series events as we travel around the world. Now back to the schedule. So it is intended that we will have a total of 16 of the World Series events. Right now, as you know, we've just concluded with Cascais, Portugal, Plymouth, England. Next, we will be in San Diego just prior to Thanksgiving. From November 12th to the 20th is San Diego. After which, we will then continue on for one additional event in February, which is to be announced. Following that, we will be in Naples, Italy, and then we'll be in Venice, and then we'll be in Newport, Rhode Island. Newport, Rhode Island will be in June, at the end of June 2012, and that will be where we crown our first America's Cup World Series champion. And that will be the culmination of the first season. The second season will then kick off in August and September for 2 separate events, but both of those events will be hosted here in San Francisco. So the community, Northern California, the Western United States, America, will be able to see the San Francisco Bay in action with the AC-45s for 2 events in the middle of 2012. After which the tour will continue. We do still have a couple of additional venue deals that we need to finalize that we will be able to announce in due course. We will then finish the sort of Pacific Ocean, Middle East part of the tour by going back to Europe again for 2 more events in Italy for Venice and Naples, and we will be finishing up in Naples?
Yeah.
Naples in May of 2013. And at that point, then, the World Series is finished, and all eyes focus on San Francisco. Now, in advance of the World Series being finished, there will be activities happening here in San Francisco on the Bay as the teams get ready for the 72s and as the team bases get built. And but then really, once the World Series is over with, then it really is all about getting the Louis Vuitton Cup started, and then it is pretty much, June, July, August, September, October. It's really 5 months of activity that's really focused here in San Francisco.
You guys are only going to have 1 World Series event. I mean, 2 in 1, but that one visit.
That's right. That's right.
Here.
We'll be here for, I would say, a 2-month period. It'll go from late July, early August, in terms of when we arrive on site to start preparing, right through to the end of the third week in September, I believe.
It looks like several of these other cities have multiple visits. Why is San Francisco only getting one?
San Francisco has two. They just happen to be back-to-back. It's also logistics, shipping logistics, in terms of where the container ship is headed around the world to fit this jigsaw puzzle together. It's been quite a challenging effort for us over the last sort of 8 months to get this pulled together, and we're very close.
Are all these other events zero waste?
We have a partnership with Sailors for the Sea, which is our global partner for the Clean Regatta program that Sailors for the Sea endorses, and they are traveling with us right now to enact their list of measures that they have as what is a clean regatta. We're building it in on a step-by-step process. So when we had Cascais, Portugal, for example, I think we were able to achieve 7 or so of the items out of their 18 on the list. For Plymouth, we increased that list even further. I don't actually know the number because I wasn't in Plymouth personally, but
the metrics are actually coming. We're doing hard metrics at every single event, and so we're collecting that data now.
yeah, it's one of the key parts of this to validate what we're doing is that we're measuring what we're doing all the way along. And so every single event for us is a way to improve going forward so that we learn from each one of these events. Obviously, this is a new thing for everybody. And so we take best practices from every event with us to the next one, and we continue to build out that program. So by the time we do get here to San Francisco in August of 2012, it should be a pretty well-polished machine, and we do expect we'll be fulfilling the full list of the Sailors for the Sea Clean Regatta program by the time we get here.
Do you have any idea what the teams will be spending, given the amount of time that they're going to be here?
I do not at this point. It would be a wild guess for me to try to put a figure on. Every team is so different in the way that we run their organization, from staffing to advanced planning to engineering to the whole concept. I mean, at the moment right now, the full focus is really on the World Series and understanding these boats. The teams have got full crews of people at every one of these events taking all of the data off of the boat during the racing that they feed into the design team because they're all currently designing their AC-72s. And so it's really, really difficult to answer that question at this point in time, but in due course we will have answers for that.
You said there were 100,000 people that came to Plymouth. Was that over a series of days?
It was over the 9-day period of the event, that's right.
And 22,000 was the peak that you got in a single day?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And how many folks did you get in Portugal?
Portugal was a different venue layout. It was a different city, so it was very difficult for us to have any kind of any good number out of Portugal because of the fact that it was very spread out along a huge beach and sort of more integrated into the city, whereas in Plymouth we had a very contained environment. We had this area that was in a lot of ways very much like San Francisco, but obviously much, much smaller, where it was really easy for us to take a look at that area and say, okay, if that's full, then we pretty much know how many people were there. So, for Portugal, it's very difficult to put a number on Portugal. It was well attended, but we didn't actually try to estimate what kind of crowd reaction we had. All we can say is that, the team that was living in Portugal for the 3 months prior to the event never saw anybody on those beaches on the weekends. And when we were there for our event, the beaches and the streets was standing room only. It was pretty packed, so it was well attended. But it wouldn't be accurate of me to try to put a number on it.
22,000 or the 100,000 about what you were hoping, or were you guys hoping for more in Plymouth?
No, we were very, very pleased with that result. Averaging over 10,000 a day during the week and then crowds in the 20, plus range on the weekends was a great result. And the main thing is that it was full. Obviously if we were here and we had, Chrissy Field and Marina Green and we only had 15, 20,000 people out there, it probably wouldn't look like it was a very well attended event. But for the venues where we are at the moment, it's a brilliant result. So we do expect San Francisco to be much bigger.
Could you just clarify, in 2013, from July 4th to September 1st, what's going on then as opposed to September 7th to the 22nd?
Sure. The Louis Vuitton Cup is effectively the playoffs. It's for all of the challengers who are hoping to hold the cup to compete against one another to determine who will be the lone winner, the team that will make it into the finals to compete against USA Oracle for the Cup. So the final is a head-to-head match race. It's a one-on-one. It's the World Series. It's all of the American analogies that you can draw to what we do here. It's the Super Bowl, with the exception of it's the best of 9 races. So first team to win 5 is the winner, and then they carry forward. So the only difference is that Oracle USA does not have to compete in the Louis Vuitton Cup. They're already in the final.
Would they normally, or is that something
No,
that
that's
they
part
would
of the tradition. Yeah, the defender, once you win it, you're automatically in the final for the next time.
And then whichever team wins that best of 9 plays the Oracle team from September 7th to, or races the Oracle team from September 7th to the 22nd.
That's correct.
And how many races are in that group?
A minimum of 5.
In the
In the final, it's the
final.
best of 9.
Both
So
of them? This
yeah,
September?
no, it's the same 2 teams going against each other. There's 9 races in total on the calendar, and the first team to win 5 is the winner.
Okay, but which calendar are you talking about?
I'm talking about September 7th to the 22nd.
Okay, well, then the July 4th to September 1st, how many races are in that group?
I think it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 40, 45 races, something like that. It's all of the challengers going against each other, but it's head-to-head, so there will be some sort of
So is it elimination?
Yeah, exactly. There'll be, I'm sure, again, the exact format of it hasn't really been finalized yet, but there will be some form of, I assume, some form of a round robin, which will then narrow itself down to an elimination round, which will then lead to a final head-to-head match between the 2 Louis Vuitton Cup finalists. And the winner of that final head-to-head will then be the team that wins, that goes on to compete against Oracle for the America's Cup. Okay. Well, I think we can keep going. We've introduced this pretty well by now. This is interesting for a number of reasons. This helps to give you an idea of how the event sort of looks and what the infrastructure looks like, and also a bit about the crowds and the fans. So, this was the setup that we had in Cascais, Portugal. You can see that the harbor, it's got a lot of normal activity going on in the background, but that this pier area that we have was set up specifically, to be able to have the craning process, bringing the boats out of the water, bringing them onto the land so they can be disassembled and wheeled into the team bases. It was very popular with the fans. It was a huge crowd draw. You can see the collection of fans, how they've been stopped so they can watch and be close to the craning process, but but not be in any danger. The large area. Sorry, I'm going to step away from the mic for a second. This area here is where we were doing our press facility, our press activities after the racing. So the sailors really get off of their boats, come here. This is where we're doing the champagne sprays and the announcements. This was one of our hospitality areas where we were entertaining sponsors and corporate guests. This was an area where we were running our on-the-water hospitality program. And then as you head down this way, this was the beginning, this is the Oracle team base, and the team base has continued all the way down this pier and then also made a left-hand turn. And maybe we'll see a little bit more of that on the next slide. This is a camera angle showing how the fans were able to really be up close and personal with the process of the boats coming in and out of the water. Now, if you recall the previous slide where they were really segregated, so they're actually not standing under the boat. This is just a really good shot from the camera angle. And here's an example of what the pit row looks like if you compare it to motorsport analogy. It was really crowded down there every day. This is really a big draw for the event, for people to be able to be up close and personal and see the teams working on their boats, to be able to interact, with the event in a much closer, much more personal way. And as we go forward, we're learning this is really one of the real core assets that we have, is to be able to allow people this sort of up close and personal access to what we're doing. Again, this is an example of the beautiful day we had in England just in the last event, with those live spectators viewing the on-air commentary, and at the same time then looking just over their right shoulder to be able to see that actual racing. It was a great event. We also have the America's Cup Experience. This is called Flying on Water. This will be coming to San Francisco. It's touring right now, as you can tell, but it is a simulated experience where we can bring 30 or 40 people into the room at any one time, and they get to watch a Disneyland IMAX-style experience where they have a big screen and they get to sort of be in the boat, if you will, including being splashed in the face with water and big wind machines blowing air in their faces. It's quite a fun experience. There's quite a few people here that have done it. I got Kiri pretty good in Portugal a couple of times, so it's a good experience. And we're rolling this program out as well to try to make it even bigger and better and even more dynamic as we go forward. As we said, this is about a youth movement. It's about attracting younger, new audiences, and it's about having an event for the first time. So we also do a series of nighttime concerts and entertainment that happen throughout the course of the event. And certainly in 2013, where we're really here for the better part of 3 months, there's going to be a tremendous amount of programming and entertainment content that's being provided around the event in a number of different ways. From smaller events all the way down to the big mass spectator events. This is a picture from Cascais, Portugal. We had 3 live concerts there. And as you can see, it was quite a popular event. It was quite a good time. And I think that is sort of to the end of this sort of background overview. As you know, everything is on americascup.com. We're showing all of the live content, all of the highlights. It's also on our YouTube page. So really encourage all of you to have a look at what's going on. And even more so now to come and visit us in San Diego for a face-to-face look from November 12th to 20th in just about 52 or 53 days' time. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Next up, we're going to hear from Carrie McClellan. Carrie is the CEO of the American Cup Organizing Committee.
Thank you, Jane. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you. I had the pleasure of being in Portugal, and it was absolutely tremendous. Both myself and my chairman, Mark Buell, were there, and we were very buoyed, very heartened by how exciting the racing was. I'm not sure if anybody had a chance yesterday to catch the fleet race in Plymouth, but Tom covered a little bit of the action from a collision in the starting line to a couple of capsizes. And Jimmy Spithill, who was driving one of the Oracle racing boats, stepped off the water. And the first thing he said is, wow, this is just like San Francisco. The weather in terms of the wind, the intensity, and that type of promotion, as Tom mentioned, it really is a calling card or a road to San Francisco over the next 2 years. What the event authority and the vision of Larry Ellison and Russell Coots have pulled together is coming to bear. And we're just tremendously excited by the performance of America's Cup Event Authority and race management really to bring this to fruition. They're doing their part. The city certainly is doing theirs, and you'll hear from them. We're also incredibly proud of how the city has stood up in its commitments in pushing forward the environmental review at a really impressive pace. While staying true to that which we feel so important, which is participation and inclusion. So we're not only excited about what's coming to bear around the world and what's going to be here in San Francisco, but also what the city's been able to do in the last really 9 months. So the organizing committee, we're doing our part as well. We, this summer, received our tax-exempt status. We were originally established as a 501c3 and then secured this summer from the IRS our tax-exempt status. So all of the donations that are coming in are tax-exempt, and that is very significant when you're out in the marketplace raising tens of millions of dollars to cover the city's expenses. As many of you are well aware, we have a milestone to meet when the environmental review process is over at the end of this year, and that is to demonstrate that we have raised the first $12 million. We're in our quiet phase right now of going out and doing the work with our committee. We've raised over $2 million in cash and commitments. That was to cover really the operational expenses and make sure we could hire staff as we've done. We're about to hire another person in the next 30 days on our development team. And we feel we're very well positioned to meet that objective. And we'll have a full report when we're at the Board of Supervisors at the end of the year to come forward on that. But the generosity that our committee members have shown and the how well received we've been in the other side of our obligation, which is to introduce the event authority to corporate sponsors in the Bay Area. We've introduced them to over 60 corporations over the last really year or so, and many of those are now turning into partnerships. So we're excited by the PwC partnership. We helped facilitate those conversations, and our role is really to take them to those best partners here in San Francisco, and they find the right fit for them. So we continue to introduce them to CEOs and executives and foster those conversations. They're incredibly important to find the right partners that are going to help them and us be successful. And I can tell you, having been in Portugal and experienced it and watching it again in Plymouth, I think folks are finding everything that has been committed is coming to bear in terms of what it means in access, public access, unique opportunities, and really just San Francisco on the global stage. We are also working on some of our other commitments in the host city agreement, including being the host committee. We're helping put together the one-stop center with the city. So we're having teams that are going to be relocating here from all over the world, certainly starting with Oracle Racing and the members of the event authority themselves. We're trying to help make sure they get any documentation they need, whether it's federal, state, or local government introductions or entities that they need to work with, being available to help them with housing or school referrals, really just putting that together. So we're in the planning phase of that, of trying to understand what the timeline is that they'll need in order to have those needs met, and working closely with the city so we don't recreate the wheel and really leverage existing assets, whether it's 311 or some of the folks in the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services, working with Congresswoman Pelosi's office and the other delegation to make sure we have direct connections to those federal agencies that need to help deliver some of these pieces as well. So I think that's generally what you need to know is going on with the organizing committee. We will be adding more committee members. We're also helping support the advancement of the sustainability plan and the community benefits package.
Can you go over the money part of it again? What's your total obligation and the timeline and all that?
Right. So the host city agreement calls for $32 million to be raised by the local organizing committee. And it's broken up in terms of deliverables. The first $12 million is due by the end of the environmental review process, and I defer to the city on exactly what the time of that will be. I think we're on track to meet the commitments in the host city agreement around that, at the end of this year. And so we're out in the marketplace raising those funds, and we have a great operational model with the event authority we provide corporate sponsor introductions for them, and they help facilitate our outreach to philanthropists, whether they're individuals or families, and are providing us with the assets that are necessary. So when you go and you ask someone for a 7-figure gift, we can clearly articulate the benefits that are coming to the city for that, helping us pay for environmental review, helping us pay for the transit, helping pay for doing this in the San Francisco way, and that's really resonating. I mean, the folks who made original and early commitments to us even before we had our tax-exempt status are really proud of the way this is unfolding. So I think as more definition comes to the plans and people have a better understanding of the community benefits, what are the youth opportunities, what are the workforce and job plans, and all of that is really unfolding over the next 3 months. So we have what we need from the event authority in terms of going out and really selling, if you will, those opportunities for folks to help us facilitate our obligations. Generally, I say I'm raising $40 million on any given day. If you count the $32 million that's specified in the host city agreement, there's also a bond provision and some other obligations, whether they're taxes or utilities, garbage, and then I have my operational expenses. So if you roll that all up, a little bit of contingency, I think we're generally comfortable saying we're raising $40 million.
Of the 32 you've raised, how much so far?
So we have, we told you this summer that when we got our tax-exempt status, we'd raised just over about $2 million. That was in gifts from about 10 members of the committee, really just towards the operational expenses and helping us get started with our staff. We are now in a quiet phase, and when we're done with our quiet phase, when we come to the Board of Supervisors, we will demonstrate that we're able to raise $12 million, and we're well on track. I'm not going to tell you what portion of that. It's in my benefit to let you know that we're well underway, and we'll get there by the end of this year.
You saw the articles in July that said you were running behind.
Yeah. We are not running behind in the least bit. It's not in my benefit to tell you exactly where we're at in that milestone until I'm done having all the meetings that we have on schedule right now. I'm out every week meeting with 2 or 3 members of our committee, and we're going beyond our committee now and having conversations about what their commitment would mean to our effort, and I'll tell you very confidently we're on target and the message is resonating.
What does it mean it's not in your benefit to tell us?
Well, when you're running a capital campaign or a fundraising campaign, you really want to get all your ducks in a row. You want to have one-on-one and private conversations with your donors about what they're able to give, what the timetable is for them to give, and you have those private conversations in a way that help facilitate those conversations.
How many members of the committee are there?
I think we're about 50 committee members, and we're having conversations with folks that are outside. That doesn't include the honorary committee members, which is really almost all of the elected officials.
So far, this $2 million you've raised has come from 10 members of that committee?
A handful, yes. And those were gifts, not 7-figure gifts.
Have any donations come from outside of members of the committee, or have they all come
Not
from
yet.
the committee?
Not yet. Yeah, we're having conversations, and when we report back at the end of this year, I would expect that a couple of those donations will come from outside of the committee, because the conversations we're having right now are with folks on the committee and outside.
And then so at what point does the city actually see this money?
We are working with the city right now on an MOU on what the payment schedule would be. We need to demonstrate by the end of this year that we will have 12 million raised, and we count this calendar year. It started July 1st, ended June 30th. So I think you'll see payments beginning when we announce that we've met the target, and then we'll pay over the rest of the year.
What happens if you don't?
If you aren't able, things dry up a little bit and you aren't able to meet the target.
The host city agreement clearly states the city has the right to terminate if we don't demonstrate that we have $12 million raised by the end of this year. It's very unequivocal. It's very straightforward. It gives the city the confidence and the authority that if we're not able to stand up and do what we said we were going to do, they have the right to terminate.
They have the right. How likely is it that they would?
You have to ask the city that question.
I mean, it seems like you're pretty locked in.
It's their right to terminate. We're confident. We've been working very closely with the city. And I have to say, the city's performance is an incredible asset to us. Their ability to show that they are doing things in an unconventional way in terms of all hands on deck and marshaling all the resources that are necessary in order to have the environmental review done on a very aggressive schedule and in a way that sees community engagement as you would expect to see. The number of community meetings that have happened to date and that which are on deck is really a testimony to the city family's dedication to this effort. And it's that type of performance that give our donors the confidence this is going to be done in the San Francisco way.
With that, excuse me, I think perhaps we'll introduce Mike Martin, who is the project director for the city of the America's Cup.
Thanks. Mike Martin, America's Cup Project Director with the City's Office of Economic and Workforce Development. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming in today. And I just want to follow up sort of the prior two speakers by saying, I think a lot of our focus today was really on taking a step outside of any specific step forward or announcement to sort of give sort of a preview of what's coming over the course of this fall. From our perspective, I think we've started to see the pictures of sort of what this event is coming together on the water, and I think it really sort of symbolizes a lot of what we're feeling here at the city in terms of putting together the rest of the event picture. And when we say the rest of the event picture, I think it goes beyond what's happening on the day of the events, but it's things like how we're going to approach the economic benefits, how we're going to try to secure those for San Francisco in the way that people really wanted to see them, how we're going to move ahead with involving the youth of San Francisco and of the Bay Area, how are we going to approach putting on an event of this scale in a way that, as Carrie described it, is in the San Francisco way. I mean, I think we've heard very clearly over the course of this year what it means to sort of bring this event to this very beautiful natural resource here in San Francisco Bay. So, I think from my perspective, what we've been coordinating at the city is a lot of the environmental review processes and the development of the implementation plans around the event. I want to give some sense of the process going forward. I think on our website, which is oewd.org, we've had an interactive PDF file of summaries of these implementation plans that are called for under the host and venue agreement. There are 11 of them. They range from things to do with waste management and the management of the park events, but also things like the water and air traffic plan, youth involvement plan, and a workforce development plan. So what we'll be seeing going forward over the course of the next, I'd say, 8 weeks is, although most of these plans are not due until after the CEQA process, what we're going to try to do is give them some visibility ahead of that time so that people can understand what is, as this picture comes together, what is it starting to look like in more detail. I think these plans will have a lot more to do with our performance strategies for how we're going to actually deliver on things like addressing the parklands in a way that safeguards those resources, that deals with the complications or the challenges of water traffic for these events. And I think we've had a great set of dialogues with the National Park Service for their lands and also the Coast Guard on the on-water piece, respectively. So this week on that website, we'll be posting what is a very sort of high-level timeline of the types of public communication and public processes that are going to be coming forward over the course of the next several months, which would include, I think, sort of the backbone of this year being the environmental review process. So, as you know, we issued a draft EIR, Environmental Impact Report, in July. We received, I believe it was over 1,300 comments to that EIR, about 2,000 plus pages of actual commentary. And so, we really appreciate that engagement, and I think we've been working hard since that time to start developing our comprehensive responses and to integrate those responses into these implementation plans as well. So that comment and response period, we'll be publishing the full compendium of responses to those comments in November, and that will be sort of the next step in the environmental review process. Following that, the publication of that document, the Planning Commission would then have a hearing to review those responses, to hear public comment, and to decide whether or not to certify the EIR as complete. I think sort of surrounding that sort of very sort of process-oriented timeline, I think we at the city are also working hard to sort of develop not only the direct picture of how we're going to put on the events, but how we're going to bring these events, or bring the benefits of these events to San Francisco, as I described earlier. I think Kiri really hit it on the head that the things that resonate about making this a San Francisco event have to do with sort of really focusing on things like environmental sustainability, focusing on where we can, integrating potential legacy benefits for environmental issues, such as finding ways to use the spotlight of the events to improve practices around the bay in terms of how people manage their marinas and boat yards and use their boats in the bay. Making sure there are ways that we can involve the youth of San Francisco, both in terms of internships, education, other ways to get people out on the water with sailing. And then also, I think to do our best to capitalize not only on the direct economic impacts of the teams and the event authority, but also the indirect impacts of how we make sort of heighten the benefits of having this event in San Francisco, bringing spectators from around the Bay Area, around the country, and around the world to see what a great place this is to come. I think we saw last weekend sort of a picture postcard kind of weekend where you can imagine someone coming to San Francisco and having really a fantastic experience, both in experiencing the events but also experiencing the neighborhoods of San Francisco, the different things that make this city great. And so I think that's the picture that we are going to be working hard this autumn to sort of pull together, and along with the hard work of our partners at the America's Cup Event Authority and the America's Cup Organizing Committee, together I think we're going to put together that mosaic of what it is to bring the America's Cup events in 2012 and 2013. One last, I guess, strategic note is I think by seeing these events, and I think the astute questions about how many people have come to these events, I think that's sort of helping us form our initial strategies for the 2012 events. And again, I think that's always been part of our strategy overall, to use the 2012 events as really a testing ground for a lot of the things, such as the transportation strategies in the people plan, or the management of the parks. I think we want to learn from day to day and week to week about how best to do this size of event so that we do it, it comes off without a hitch in 2013. And so I think we're excited about having not only the opportunity in 2012 to see this new concept of America's Cup racing, but also to see what it means to have this type of event in San Francisco and what it is that we can do to make it even better in 2013. I guess the last piece is also, coming forward over the course of the fall will be, more defined plans as to the actual real estate aspects of the transaction, to do with where the event venues will be, where the spectator venues. I think we've heard plenty of comments on both of those fronts, and so we're working hard at this point to develop the appropriate set of answers to really make that the whole picture come together.
Do you have any sense of how much the city has spent on this so far?
How much the city has spent? In this year's budget, there was an appropriation of $12 million, which was to match the incoming $12 million from the ACOC. We've spent, I'd say, approximately $3 to $4 million thus far, and that's from a wide range of activities, including staff time, but also environmental review and other consultants relating to that. So that's kind of where we are at this point. We foresee that over the course of the full set of of planning activities that we would likely, use a larger amount of that budget during this fiscal year, but that's not clear how that's going to play out until we've kind of gone through those processes a little further.
Just to clarify your answer, you said the city has appropriated $12 million to match, I think, what Kerry's group is supposed to raise, but
it's not a match.
Right, it's eventually be offset by what?
Exactly.
And then if they are unsuccessful at raising that amount of money, the city can make a decision, either cancel the event or continue with the event, but use public funds instead of the raised funds. By
the decision is to terminate. It's sort of, and that decision would obviously carry with it a decision of how we're going to proceed if there's more expected fundraising, if more time is needed. I mean, I don't want to necessarily speculate on what.
So if it's a shortfall, it's not necessarily that the public funds are going to be used. It's that there's another decision that needs to be made.
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, definitely the understanding going into this year was the $12 million would be the source of those funds.
Just to clarify on those numbers, actually, if that's okay. You said you spent $3 to $4 million so far, and you expect to spend the $20 million by the end of the year?
It's 12, not 20. And I don't expect to spend 12 million. I'm saying I think we'll be within that amount for the planning process that we're looking at this point.
And the other question I had, actually, you've had a couple of weeks to review all the public comments that came into the draft EIR. Wondering what your take is. Do you feel like is it doable to answer all those questions?
I think so. I think we're pretty confident. I think what's been really helpful about this process is I think people have been really willing to engage with us as we've moved forward and learning more about what we need to do for the events. And so I think we've had good dialogue with interested stakeholders kind of leading up to the comment and response period. And then even since the time the draft EIR went out, we've had a number of productive meetings with people who have raised a lot of the issues because we need to learn. We need to understand what it is that really drives their concerns and trying to see where we can find solutions. And I think I would say across the broad range of things that we saw in those comments and at the Planning Commission hearing, we feel pretty confident we're going to have a good set of answers.
Well, there's been made of the marina, I think near Rincon.
Sorry?
A lot has been talked about with the marina near Rincon. I'm curious how is that discussion going with BCDC and others?
It's a productive discussion. I mean, we've definitely heard the concerns that have been raised, and I think BCDC has been helpful with us in helping us understand their point of view. I think it's one of those things that it has a lot of different facets because it's not just the specific locations that I think people have focused on, but it's broadly speaking, how does this event work along the waterfront where BCDC has its focus on public access and public engagement. So I think we're continuing to work to understand how we can approach that and come to a solution that we think all sides will be happy with. Anything to add on that?
I just would note that BCDC also was a commenter on the draft environmental impact report, and they detailed those concerns in their letter as well as some potential solutions, and also talked about public access requirements that would be additional legacy benefits to San Francisco.
And I'm just going to seize on that word legacy really quick to say, I think something we've been continuing to talk about as a thread throughout all of these implementation plans is what is the legacy to San Francisco? And it really has, for us, it's stepped beyond just the legacy of the high profile event that's coming here, but what it is that people would take away and say, because of the attention, because of the resources, because of the interest in this event, that things got better in San Francisco. And sometimes that's brick and mortar infrastructure for public access, but sometimes it's just a better operating platform for Muni or a better cooperation with regional transit operators, or different ways to involve people in sort of educating themselves about our waterfront, which has, frankly been one of the most exciting parts of this process for me is learning, what a fantastic place the Northern Waterfront is when you're able to really focus on it in the way that we've been able to. So it's an exciting part of this, and we're going to be talking about that a lot this fall.
Well, one of the legacies is that a lot of the waterfront is going to be turned over to Larry Ellison and his counterparts over 75, 100 years or sold to him. Have you guys are you guys working at all on any plans for what will happen with all of that property that they will wind up with?
Well, I think to reset that a little bit, I mean, in the first place, the transaction really relates to the development rights arise from the dollars they put in for the infrastructure that's needed for the events. And so primarily, the real estate transaction centers around Piers 30, 32, and Seawall Lot 330. It's only if additional funds are expended beyond what the $55 million requirement is in the host and venue agreement that there would be potential other sites. You know,
Are they on track to do that? Has there been discussions about whether that's going to happen, or is it a wait and see kind of, we'll just see how much money we spend to see how much property we wind up rights to?
It is most emphatically not a wait and see. I mean, that's a lot of what the conversations we're having with them now. I'll defer a little to Brad Benson from the port about the specifics, but broadly speaking, before I do, you know, the scope of work is obviously a key part of the project description, and so we need to understand exactly what's going to happen, not only for purposes of the real estate deal, but also for the permits we need from the different permitting agencies, for responding to comments to the EIR. So we're going to be very sort of prescriptive and understanding of what is actually going to happen there. And with that, maybe I'll turn it to you.
One quick question. I think the concern is that because this is a gamble, that a big crowd is going to show up at a yachting event in the United States, which would be unprecedented, that the commitment that's being made is being backed up by city funds. And you're saying the city has the ability to withdraw, but you know, if you're fairly deep into it, what's the likelihood that the city would say, well, you know, we're not going to spend $30 million of public money on this thing, and we were unable to raise it in a recession, and
I mean,
everything comes to naught. It seems to me like you're sort of in for a penny, in for 30 million.
Well, I guess I disagree with that, mainly because it wasn't that long ago that this transaction structure was approved by the city and the city policymakers. I mean, very specifically, they called out for there to be $32 million of fundraising from the organizing committee. And similarly, you know, the $12 million that needed to be in hand at the end of CEQA, I mean, that was a key checkpoint. It's not just sort of just something to look at. I think it's very viable for the city to take a clear eye and take a look at where things are at that point and say, is this event that we've put together, both in terms of the specifics of the event through the EIR, but also the financial aspect, something we can move forward in this fiscal climate? So I think that's the case that we're going to try to work with our partners to put together so that people can understand what it is that we're trying to do. And I think, you know, getting back to the unprecedented nature of this event, I think it is unprecedented to bring this type of event this close to shore. And so we're looking forward to trying to make that picture more clear to people so that, you know, it's understood this is what we're bringing. And I don't think we're trying to hide any of the facts, but we're saying, you know, this is what this means to San Francisco, and we think it's a good decision for us to make.
Right, and if you think it's going to be a big benefit to the city down the road, how likely would you pull out if you didn't get the first $12 million in fundraising?
Well, I mean, that's a question for the people that have the ability to vote on that. I guess by the same token, though, you know, I mean, I don't want to minimize anything to do with the challenging economic times we're in. I mean, it definitely it means a lot to go through with an event like this, but by the same token, I think there are benefits from this kind of event to bring it to San Francisco. And so, you know, that weighing process will go on with the people that have the authority to do that, and we're going to support them and giving them the information they need to make that decision.
Are there any issues brought up in the comments that have made you guys, you know, that you didn't necessarily think about before, or you guys are looking into more?
I think we're looking into all the comments. I mean, we've definitely tried to cast as wide a net as we could with as thorough as we were on the draft EIR. We have a compressed amount of time to do this in, and so we've been sort of actively engaged throughout the course of this year, trying to understand what are the issues, what are the good strategies to address them. So I don't think there's anything in the EIR that took us by surprise. I think it's really just the challenge of doing the hard work of putting together solutions that people can understand and say that's appropriate for what we want to bring here.
After the 12 million benchmark, is there another opportunity for the city to back out, or is that kind of the last chance to say no?
There are several sort of different termination rights under the agreement. I think that's sort of the key, much like, I mean, for purposes of the environment, under the California Environmental Quality Act, it's only after the environmental review that the city can bind itself to say, yes, we're moving ahead with this. And so that was looked at as a key checkpoint. You know, we've looked at the environmental review piece, we've seen the initial fundraising, and this is where we're moving ahead at this point based on that information. So I guess I wouldn't say there's no other.
It's not like if they don't raise 20 million or 30 million, if they stop at 12, there's not another like trigger like that automatically makes you rethink.
That's the one sort of key checkpoint.
So they could basically stop at 12, and then after that, the next 20 million, we could wind up holding the bag on?
Well, no, I mean, I think the commitment under the agreement is for the, America's Cup Organizing Committee is a party to the agreement, and their commitment is to raise up to 32 million.
If they don't, it's just we're taking them on their word that they're going to do that, and that they can do that.
I don't think the consequences have to do with putting on the events. I mean, it's not necessarily punishing them for not having raised the funds. I guess I don't understand.
I mean, that there aren't any consequences in terms of being able to say no to the event. I mean, if they don't raise the 32 million, the city still winds up paying for that. There's no consequences to anybody except for the city if they don't raise that money.
Well, I think that's the structure of the agreement, that there's the fundraising to defray up to 32 million of city costs. If those costs come in higher or lower, it doesn't really change how much is coming in based on the organizing committee's commitment.
And one more question about the implementation plans. You said there's 11, and I know that there's various deadlines for those. Some of them, like the advertising plan and the ambush marketing plan, have already been, submitted, and then there's several others that kind of seem important that won't actually be in until after the CEQA. So like team bases operation plan, parks event plan. Oh no, I guess that's coming in this fall. But I'm just kind of, are those going to be reviewed publicly, or what's the plan for those?
Yes, so broadly speaking, I think all of the plans that you're talking about, all 11, except for the team-based operations plan, which is more related to the port pier sites and how they're managing different sort of, I guess you can describe that a little better. But broadly speaking, the parks plan, we're trying to put all these plans out ahead of when they're due under the host and venue agreement so that people have that visibility. So that will be over the course of October. And basically, people can review those plans. We'll get that feedback as we're going into the board process to consider whether to move forward. So it won't be after all that happens. There'll be visibility on those. All right.
Any other questions? Concerns? Anybody want to get sprayed with water?
While I share a $100 bill.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you coming in.